child arrived just the other day. He came to the world in the usual way, but there were planes to catch and bills to pay. He learned to walk while I was away, and he was talking for I knew it. And as he grew, he'd say, I'm gonna be like you, Dad. You know I'm gonna be like you. And the cat's in the cradle and a silver spoon, little boy blue and the man on the moon. When you're coming home, Dad, I don't know when, but we'll get together then, son. You know we'll have a good time then. Well, my son turned 10 just the other day. He said, thanks for the ball, Dad, come on, let's play. Can you teach me to throw? I said, not today, I got a lot to do. He said, that's okay, and he walked away, but his smile never dimmed. It said, I'm gonna be like him, yeah. You know I'm gonna be like him. And the cat's in the cradle and a silver spoon, little boy blue and the man in the moon. When you're coming home, Dad, I don't know when, but we'll get together then, son. You know we'll have a good time then. Well, he came from college just the other day, so much like a man I just had to say, son, I'm proud of you, can you sit for a while? He shook his head and he said with a smile, what I'd really like, Dad, is to borrow the car keys. See you later, can I have them, please? And the cat's in the cradle and a silver spoon, little boy blue and the man on the moon. When you're coming home, son, I don't know when, we'll get together then, Dad. You know we'll have a good time then. Well, I've long since retired, my son's moved away. I called him up just the other day. I said, I'd like to see you if you don't mind. He said, I'd love to, Dad, if I could find the time. You see, my new job's a hassle and the kids have the flu, but it's sure nice talking to you, Dad. It's been sure nice talking to you. And as he hung up the phone, it occurred to me, he'd grown up just like me. My boy was just like me. And the cat's in the cradle and a silver spoon, little boy blue and the man in the moon. When you're coming home, son, I don't know when, but we'll get together then, Dad. You know we'll have a good time then.
Good morning. Welcome to the virtual home of the Calgary Unitarians. Whoever you are, whomever you love, and wherever you are on your journey or faith or search for meaning, welcome. If you are visiting us for the first time or the first time in a long time, know that we are grateful to have you with us. We come together in beloved community to grow in wisdom, to welcome and deepen relationships, and to act for a just and sustainable world. My name is Jane Ebern, and I use the pronouns she, her, and I have the privilege of serving on your board of trustees. I started coming to this congregation many years ago, looking for a non-dogmatic approach to spirituality, and I certainly found that here, and I continue to come because of the warmth of the congregation. Please join us after the service for a virtual coffee hour where we shall meet in small breakout rooms and get a chance to socialize. And this Sunday, for those who are curious about this congregation and about Unitarian Universalism in general, please ask to join the UU Curious coffee breakout room after the service. Margaret and Mary Jane will be there to answer questions that you may have. and we look forward to meeting you. And then on Saturday, February 13th, from 10 to noon, there will be a special Zoom session to which we invite newcomers. This occasion is planned to explore further questions that newcomers may have about Calgary Unitarians. Before I begin our land acknowledgement, let me explain that a land acknowledgement is a way to recognize that we are coexisting in this land with the Native peoples, and that we should acknowledge that it is their land. But at the same time, we are all guests to this land. So wherever you are located now, please acknowledge the traditional lands on which you live. For those of us in Calgary, we acknowledge that this meeting takes place on the traditional territories of the people of the Blackfoot Confederacy, comprising the Siksika, Piikani, and Kainai First Nations, as well as the Tsuut'ina First Nation and the Stoney Nakoda, including the Chiniki, Bearspaw, and Wellesley First Nations of the Treaty 7 region of Southern Alberta. The city of Calgary is also home to Métis Nation of Alberta, Region 3. We acknowledge that we are all treaty people. And now to Mary Anna Louise for our chalice lighting.
We light our chalice this morning with the words of Carl Seeberg. Let there be joy in our coming together. Let there be truth heard in the words we speak and the songs we sing. Let there be help and healing for our disharmony and our despair. Let there be silence for the voice within us and beyond us. Let there be joy in our coming together. With joy, we light our chalice this morning. I am Mariana Louise Kovar, and I'm your worship facilitator for this morning's service. Calgary Unitarian services follow a monthly theme, and our theme for January is integrity. The word integrity stems from a Latin word, integer, which means whole or complete. The more recent and familiar definition we use is the quality of being honest and having strong moral principles, moral uprightness. I invite you to explore the Reflections document on our website for a closer look at the many aspects of integrity. This morning, we're delighted to have a guest speaker with us. The Reverend Brian Kiley is happily retired after 22 years of satisfying ministry at the Unitarian Church of Edmonton, and 10 more as the founding minister of the South Fraser Unitarian Congregation in Surrey, BC. He has served on the Canadian Unitarian Council Board, including terms as the president, and he served as the president of the International Council of Unitarians and Universalists. He presently works part-time for the city of Edmonton, adjudicating property tax appeals. No, it's really far more interesting than it sounds. He keeps up with his cycling in case the Ride to Conquer Cancer relaunches. He has ridden 8 times and is currently the captain of the Cross Cancer Institute team. And he hasn't minded all the lockdowns, as it has meant more time with family and animals. We look forward to hearing his reflections later in the service. And now let's go to Jane Perry for our first song.
Good morning, friends. It's good to be together with you again in this virtual space. So as we approach this conversation together about promises, broken promises, and atonement, let's center ourselves, and let's do that with a song. We'll sing together, Return Again.
Return to the home Good morning, everyone. It's so great to see all of you. I'm Sheila McMaster, the Director of Religious Education, and I have some great things for the children and youth today. Let me just take a look here in my DRE notebook. So for the children today at 1 o'clock, we're going to be practicing empathetic listening and sharing a folk tale from Scotland called The Wounded Seal. And for the youth, we meet at 2 o'clock, and we're taking a look at the Promise and Practice Sunday in support of Black Lives of Unitarian Universalism. So I'm very excited about that. And today, we're also talking about promises. And in this week's CYRE Children and Youth Religious Education newsletter, I've put in 5 ways that we can keep our promises to our children. Because for myself, sometimes we say yes, and we don't realize it's a promise, and it'll be bedtime, and I'll hear, but we were going to play that game. You promised. And I'll be like, yeah, it's bedtime. That was this afternoon. And so sometimes we say yes, and we don't realize that for our children, that's a promise. And so take a look at that in this week's newsletter. And if you don't get my newsletter, it's very easy. Just email me at sheila@calgaryunitarians.ca, and I can get you hooked up. And the quote I put in the newsletter this week is, people with good intentions make promises. People with good character keep them. And now to Mariana Louise.
We will enter now into a time of centering. We'll begin with a reading, followed by silence, and completed with a musical response. I invite our guest, Brian Kiley, to offer the reading.
Good morning. It's a pleasure to be with you. This is by Frank Sonnenberg, and it's called A Promise is a Promise. Do you think before you make a promise to someone? Now, what if you can't deliver on your word? Does it really matter? The world isn't going to come to an end, is it? Well, actually, no. But have you considered? Many people are pretty casual about making promises. As a result, promises are frequently made at the drop of a hat with no real intention of keeping them, as Sheila suggested. Let's do lunch. I'll call you later, and I'll be there in 5 minutes are all examples of throwaway promises that are frequently made but seldom kept. However, this casual attitude can have real consequences. When you break a promise, no matter how small it may seem to you, alarm bells are not going to go off, but it can damage a relationship or a reputation. Think about it. When someone else breaks a promise to you or gets caught in a lie, doesn't that make you feel a little bit violated or a little bit cheated? You can't help wondering whether you were wrong to ever trust that person. And getting away with a lie can also be dangerous because it fools people into believing you're invincible, it fools liars into believing they're invincible and that they have little chance of getting caught. Before you know it, lying can become a habit, forcing liars to spend precious time and energy keeping their stories straight. Once others learn about the lies, some people may forgive, but they probably won't forget. There was a time when keeping your word held special significance. We took great pride in being of good character. Personal integrity was both expected and it was valued. That was a time when everyone knew each other's family, and you wouldn't do anything that would cast a shadow on your family's good name. It was a time when integrity was instilled in children at a very young age and was viewed as instrumental in achieving success. The truth is, our world may have changed, but the importance of integrity has not. While we may not know everyone in our town anymore, the world is smaller than you think and creates some bad news, and you'll learn that for yourself. Every time you give your word, you're putting your honor on the line. You're implying that others can place their trust in you because you value integrity and would never let them down. It goes without saying that if you don't live up to your word, you may end up tarnishing your credibility, damaging your relationships, and defaming your own reputation. Most importantly, you'll be letting yourself down. But when you operate with complete integrity, what you say will be taken at face value. Your intentions will assume to be honorable, and your handshake will be as good as a contract. Not these days, of course, but when we get back to having handshakes, they will be assumed to be as good as a contract. Most importantly, you can take great pride in the standards that you've set for yourself and sleep well at night, knowing that your conscience is clear. As for others, well, just when they think they're fooling the world, they'll realize that they're only fooling themselves. A promise is a promise after all.
Let us take a moment now to tend the sacred bonds that bind our lives to one another, those relationships that are the foundation of beloved community. We recognize ourselves as part of an interdependent web of existence, affirming that what touches the lives of one of us affects us all. In these moments, we seek to widen our caring community by sharing the joys, sorrows, and concerns and milestones in our own lives and in the life of the congregation. We encounter struggles. Some are experiencing illness, their own or the illness of a loved one. Others are dealing with isolation that comes with tighter COVID restrictions. And for some, there are financial concerns caused by restrictions and shutdowns in the workplace. For these and all the concerns we hold silently in our hearts, we light our candle of care. There are joys and celebrations in our midst as well. Have you been outside this week in the warm and the sunshine? It's a joy to be able to go somewhere and maybe even get dressed up to go for a walk. One of my joys this past week was a wonderful conversation that I had with one of our members after last Sunday's coffee hour. This was the result of a personal invitation in the chat. So often when we are in our building, we are able to find a quiet spot to have deeper conversations maybe even go out to lunch together or for a coffee. This is much more difficult with a virtual coffee hour, but it was such a wonderful experience. And I encourage you to try that yourself. Is there somebody that you've seen at coffee hour that you would love to have a conversation with or have a question for? Please think about giving that person a call, maybe sending a quick email, inviting them to have a conversation with you. It's hard to keep up with each other when we aren't together every Sunday. Another joy that we have is the guests among us, and we hope you are enjoying the service. And do please join us for coffee afterwards. The virtual coffee hour, although it isn't as great as in person, it is a wonderful opportunity to talk with each other. We light our candle of joy today for those spoken and those held silently in our hearts. We light our global candle today in acknowledgement of the unprecedented partnerships around the world that have resulted in the approval of some and the continued development of other vaccines against the COVID virus.
Good morning again. And it's a real pleasure to be back with the folks in Calgary. And just for fun, next week would be 1 year ago since my last sermon. So it's a pleasure to have a chance to do it again. Thank you very much for having me. In 2 days, 23 hours and 5 minutes, the most brazen liar ever to hold court in the White House will be gone, or at least he will no longer be in office. In his 4 years, the Washington Post estimates he has said, tweeted, or retweeted over 20,000 falsehoods. Most egregious has been the constant claims dating back to last summer that this election was rigged, or now that it was stolen. A 59-1 series of court losses has not dampened his ardor for making this claim. The United States will be dealing with damage to its democracy, the damage he has wrought for decades to come. For 4 years, truth and integrity have mattered for nothing. In my view, the 45th president was defeated on a matter of character. I offer as evidence the way the right-wing media did everything possible to catch President-elect Biden in a lie, a contradiction, or some failing of character. They didn't find much. Now, nobody believes for a second that a politician tells the full truth all of the time. It's really not even possible within that line of work. Why that is so a topic for another sermon entirely. But within the broad definition of truthful, Joe Biden has held up pretty well. By contrast, the sitting president became more desperate, more irrational, and more clownish as the weeks went by. And as we saw most recently, more dangerous as well. And as one commentator noted in late December, he effectively gave up acting like a president a few days after the election. The Americans have a long tradition of respecting the presidency with an almost royal regard. And Mr. Biden's biggest job, though he has not acknowledged it, will be trying to restore respect for that office once again. It's going to be an uphill battle. President 45 made many promises. He kept very few and then lied about the ones he didn't keep. And perhaps his actions have been unforgivable, but that's irrelevant. There cannot be forgiveness until one admits error and asks for pardon, which, by the way, excludes writing your own. Okay, following that thread with regards to a departing president is almost too mind-boggling to contemplate, so I'm going to leave the political realm now and move us back to a more moral and religious approach. As we delve deeper into the promises we make and those made to us, the Jewish tradition offers some interesting concepts on forgiveness. In order to atone for sin, the good Jew must go and ask the person who has been wronged to forgive them, must ask directly. Now, think about that for a moment. You've broken a promise to someone, perhaps hurt them quite badly, even if you had not intended to do so. And you know it. You know it. I expect most of us know that really sick feeling we have when we have failed someone, especially someone we love. But fessing up is hard. It can require courage sometimes. The good Jew has to go and connect directly with the wronged party, and face the potential of their anger, feeling the burning shame of their confession, and be prepared to do what has to be done to make things right, if that's at all possible. That's hard work. The alternative is walking away with a piece of you unfixed and unhealed. Assuming it happens more than once, you get a person who becomes increasingly isolated, increasingly cut off from community and affection. Correcting our course, getting back on the right path is a key to spiritual and mental health. But what happens if the wronged party is not ready to forgive yet? Well, the tradition says you must approach them 3 times asking for forgiveness. And if you are refused each time, then and only then can you seek forgiveness directly from God. And this reminds us that promise making and promise breaking are 2-way streets. At least 2 people are involved when promises are made to others. Now, I might screw up and fail to deliver on a promise for all kinds of reasons. I might feel genuinely sorry for my actions. But forgiveness goes both ways. The wronged party has to get past their hurt, be able to forgive, and to move on. That can be difficult too. Some people get so wrapped up in the broken promise that they get trapped by it. Some people simply cannot get past the hurt. It's not a criticism, that's a statement of fact. Some people wear that hurt like a badge of honor in an oddly comforting blanket. That's what they have to do to survive. I don't really know if it's a good thing or a bad thing, but should that unwillingness to forgive stop the offender from moving on with their life? Judaism says no. The 3 tries, 3 genuine tries is sufficient. And the Jewish tradition recognizes that just as you had no right to harm in the first place, the hurt party has no right to hold the truly repentant promise breaker hostage forever. Now, some relationships cannot be harmed or cannot be mended after the breaking of a pledge. That's just the way it is. There is no judgment on either party in this 3 tries practice, but rather a very human acknowledgement that we will have challenges in our lives, all of us, and we will meet them differently. The expectation is that we have a chance to learn, to grow, and to move forward toward living better lives, having been changed by the experience. Forgiveness is available to all who have genuinely tried to atone and learn from their errors. Directly seeking forgiveness up to 3 times seems like a pretty arduous regime to me. Certainly worse than my Catholic upbringing, where I confessed anonymously to a priest, said a few prayers, and was absolved. Or other Christian traditions where a general confession prayer at church seems to cover it. This Jewish thing has consequences. And maybe consequences is what we need to strengthen our commitment to keeping the promises that we make to others. When I was working at the Unitarian Church of Edmonton, I was on a list for Alcoholics Anonymous. From time to time, I was asked to help someone who was working through their fifth step. I recall one where I met an elderly man who was trying to get clear again nearly 50 years after his first visit to AA. In the fifth step, people in recovery, having undertaken an inventory of their wrongs, quote, admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. My job was to be that other human being. In step 9, they will then go as directly as possible to the person they have harmed and own up to the hurt that they have done. That's the consequence. It seems that the friend named Bill had at least a passing familiarity with the Jewish Yom Kippur atonement practices. The Hebrew Bible is a history of promises made and promises broken and promises remade, mostly between the leaders of the Hebrew tribes and Yahweh. Yom Kippur in October, the Day of Atonement, is a continuation of that theme. The message is very simple. Nobody's perfect. Even Yahweh broke a promise or two along the way. Everybody screws up. Everybody gets a chance to make good again. It may seem an odd way to discuss a sermon on the promises we make to others, but let's face it, whatever our best intentions and even well-meaning actions, we are going to screw up and break promises that we make to other people. So let's begin with that assumption. What is it in our makeup that makes promise-keeping challenge so difficult for so many of us? Well, there are a lot of factors. For one thing, many who study such things feel we have different kinds of promises that we make. Psychologist David McGraw names 3 categories, each carrying a different weight of commitment. First is, there are 3 types of promises. A promise is a personal commitment that people expect you to keep. The first one is strong, healthy promises. Promises that I am fully committed to keep. You can count on me. And if I'm unable to keep my promise, I can renegotiate my original promise, i.e., I'll meet you for coffee at 8 a.m., or I will complete my assignment on time, or I'll call you to reschedule beforehand. A promise is a promise, and I accept a firm obligation to deliver. I imagine that's how most of us think when we make our promises, but is that really true? I think many of us, and here I'll put myself at the front of the line, have at least sometimes made what McGraw calls shallow promises. Looks like a strong promise, but an unspoken condition exists. Yes, I will play golf with you on Saturday, unless it rains or something else comes up. The comic strip Zits illustrates the shallow promise quite nicely. Mom asks teenager Jeremy if he has weekend plans. Oh, sure, I'll probably decide to do something with friends. And then when a more interesting possibility comes along, I'll bail on the first thing. And later on, when the second thing falls apart, I'll just end up moping around here. Unbelievable, says his mother. At least I have plans, he calls back. Those of us who use social media to set up event pages know the meaning of shallow promises only too well. People click going all the time, but event planners know very well that as much as 75% of those people won't make it. Jeremy's plans seem to be an increasing norm in a society these days. Casually say yes with no thought of the weight of promise. Well, McGraw then names his third category with a very harsh term. He calls them criminal promises. Promises that at the moment we make them, we know we have no intention of keeping. Like, my son asks me to play with him when I'm done, and I tell him, oh, maybe, yeah, sure, yeah. Harry Chapin's song, Cats in the Cradle, that we heard at the beginning of the service, reminds us that breaking promises, even McGraw's criminal promises, have consequences. In the song, the father who broke promises to his son over a lifetime ends up with the son who's grown and breaks his promises to his father. Karma. The concept of keeping promises has become watered down. I'll admit my own part in that. I confess to have made and broken my share of shallow promises. Maybe even some of the bigger ones too. But at least I showed up today. Yet I note that making promises and being honest merits no mention in our Unitarian Universalist statement of principles. Maybe it's just assumed as a given. And yet it only appears in the 9th of 10 commandments in Exodus, and then only as a matter of not bearing false witness against your neighbor. Promise making is a whole lot larger than not spreading unfounded rumors. And it's curious how formal moral codes often leave this promise thing out. Once the appearance of honor seemed to be everything, and keeping one's promise or oath was a critical part of being honorable, being part of society. But that's not so true anymore. Even perjury is seldom prosecuted these days. And it will be interesting how President 45 to see what happens to him in the days after he leaves office, if he'll truly be called on his lies. As I began with the White House reference, we certainly don't have much faith in political promises anymore, if we ever did. Huffington Post mentions that in Canada, politicians are rated as the least trusted professions. Only 18% trust them, followed by car sellers at 28% and pollsters at 34%. CEOs, bankers, lawyers, and realtors all come in around 50%. When the people who supposedly lead our society are perceived as untrustworthy, why should the rest of us bother? The psychologist Frank Sonnenberg, the author of our reading, has an answer. When you break a promise, no matter how small it may seem to you, alarm bells aren't going to go off, but it can damage a relationship or your reputation. Think about it. When someone breaks a promise to you or gets caught in a lie, doesn't it make you feel violated or cheated? You can't help wondering if you were wrong to ever trust that person. Getting away with a lie can also be dangerous because it fools liars into believing that they are invincible and that they have little chance of getting caught. Before you know it, lying can become a habit, forcing liars to spend precious time and integrity keeping their stories straight. Once others learn about the lies, some people may forgive, but they surely won't forget. We live in such a complex and fast-moving age. There is so much false news, subterfuge, and anti-science beliefs that fly in the face of proven facts. And frankly, if some public figure makes a statement that needs later correction when new facts come to light, too many of us throw away their expertise because they weren't exactly right the first time. Today, the venom directed against public health professionals and discussions of masks and vaccines is literally costing lives. Lots of them. Remember the Jewish thing? We have to be willing to forgive a misstatement or a broken promise before either party can move ahead. Finding information we trust is increasingly difficult. It seems to me that finding people we can trust is becoming more and more important. And perhaps if we hope to find them, then we have to take the first step and become the most trustworthy person we can be. Only make promises we plan to keep. And when you fail, seek to atone for them as soon as possible. Follow the path of Yom Kippur. Trust, faith, covenant, promise keeping, atonement. All of these are two-way streets. The first step along those streets belongs to each one of us. Thank you and amen.
The song is called We Begin Again in Love. And we're going to do it this morning as a sort of responsive reading in which Marianne and Louise will be reading a line, and then I, with all of us, will be singing a response. And the response is, we forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love. I'm going to sing it for you once and then invite you to sing it with me, just so we can practice that together. We forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love. Sing it with me. We forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love. Let's begin.
For remaining silent when a single voice would have made a difference.
We forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love.
For each time that our fears made us rigid and inaccessible.
We forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love.
For each time we have struck out in anger without just cause.
We forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love.
For each time that our greed has blinded us to the needs of others.
We forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love.
For the selfishness which sets us apart and alone.
We forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love.
For falling short of the admonitions of the Spirit.
We forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love.
For losing sight of our unity.
We begin ourselves and each other. We begin again in love.
For those and for so many acts, both evident and subtle, which have fueled the illusion of separateness.
We forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love. We forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love.
When we are gathered together in person, we take time for a tangible expression of gratitude for this community by passing the offering baskets. Today in our virtual services, we offer you the opportunity to reflect on the value of this community in your lives, especially now. There are numerous ways to contribute, and we are working on more ways to make that even easier. Truth be told, this offertory moment is also in part to provide us with another opportunity for sharing some great music. So as you reflect on the value of this community to you, consider what you might do to them, and also please enjoy this music. Please be as generous as you can.
Our closing words this morning are from Christine Carter. People ask me all the time what the secret to happiness is. If you just had to pick one thing, they wonder, what would be the most important thing for leading a happy life? 10 years ago, I would have told you a regular gratitude practice was the most important thing. And while that is still my favorite instant happiness booster, my answer has changed. I believe the most important thing for happiness is living truthfully. Be transparent, honest, authentic. Do not ever waver from this. White lies and false smiles quickly snowball into a life lived out of alignment. It is better to be yourself and risk having people not like you than to suffer the stress and tension that comes from pretending to be someone you're not, or professing to like something you don't. I promise you, pretending will rob you of joy. Anytime we pretend to be or feel something that we aren't, we are out of integrity with ourselves. And anytime we're doing something that is more about influencing what others think of us than it is about authentically expressing ourselves, even something as simple as a Facebook post that makes it seem like we're having a better day than we actually are, we end up out of integrity with ourselves. Being out of integrity has pretty serious consequences for our happiness and for our relationships. And now we join Jane Perry for our closing song.
As we take our next solemn steps together as individuals and also as community, may those steps also be joyful. A closing blessing for all of us in the form of a song. May your life be as a song, resounding with the dawn to sing awake the light and softly serenade the stars, ever dancing circles in the night. It's a short song, so let's sing it together twice. May your life be as a song, resounding with the dawn to sing awake the light and softly serenade the stars, ever dancing circles in the night. May your life be as a song, resounding with the dawn to sing awake the light and softly serenade the stars, ever dancing circles in the night.
Reminded that we are part and participants of the universe, let us go forth from the quiet of this hour, encouraged to strive toward faithfulness to the best in ourselves, in others, and in all of creation. As we extinguish our chalice, may its light go with us and guide us along our way until we meet again.
Thanks to Reverend Brian Kiley, to Mariana Louise, and to everyone who had a hand in putting together today's service. In a moment, we're going to go to our virtual coffee time, and whether you're new this morning or a longtime member of this congregation, please join us for a conversation. To get there, what you'll need to do is to click on the red button that says Leave to leave this meeting, and the next screen that'll pop up in your browser will have a purple coffee mug on it. Click on that purple coffee mug and you'll be admitted to conversation with some really friendly folks. Let's sing together our closing benediction, Spirit of Life.